I'd like to call the Township of North Huntington Board of Commissioners public hearing for Tuesday, September 8th, 2020. Roll call, Manager Silka.
Commissioner Stump.
Here.
Commissioner Atwood.
Here.
Commissioner Blasco.
Here.
Commissioner Zona.
Here.
Commissioner Bevan.
Here.
Commissioner Goss.
Here.
Commissioner Haggis.
Here, could everyone please stand and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're here for the public meeting to consider the public input with respect to the proposed ordinance for the regulation of chicken keeping in the residentially zoned areas within North Huntington Township. We're going to open up the hearing to hear for citizens' input. I don't know if there was a list. No. Okay. So,
If residents want to come up, just make sure you can clearly state your name and address for the recorder, please. So if someone would like to speak first, you can go ahead up to the podium.
Hello, everyone. Craig Erkison, 141 Falcon Ridge Drive, North Huntington, Pennsylvania. YURCHISON. Ready?
Yep.
Oh, you all know by now my stance on backyard chickens. I've been a supportive of this since the get-go. Actually, I think I'm sort of the ones who started leading this recent charge for it. I think it's great for people to have them for a handful of them for personal household use. They don't take up any room. They're clean. They're quiet. They take care of the insects in the yard, as well as any weeds, a lot better than you can with, or I should say not better, but safer than you can with any chemicals or insecticides. They produce eggs, which are far healthier than you can get from the grocery store. That was my big thing, just saying I'm really supportive of this. I appreciate all the input and support that we're getting from the commissioners, and I'm actually willing to address this. Looking over this ordinance, I had one comment I wanted to make. There was requirement C, discuss the protective covenants in housing plans. Now, I believe the solicitor had said that the township does not get involved with protective covenants, but it's stated in the ordinance. They're discussing a covenant to have, say, poultry, which fine, that is the way it's stated. If you live somewhere that says you cannot have poultry, chickens, goats, whatever, that is that's the way it's stated. But there are some covenants in the area that say residential. So when you mention you're not allowed to have chickens where it says non-residential, now is North Huntington Township actually intervening with these covenants, trying to just determine what was decided by the builders when they wrote these, or is it, just trying to control who has chickens, whether or not, your covenant says you can or not? Just real quick offshoot, as far as covenants, there's many areas that have covenants and the people are in violation of them, and the township doesn't get involved with them as they're supposed to, or as was stated by the solicitor in the past. So just that one thing just kind of stuck with me, that it's kind of getting to like we talked about a gray area, but you're trying to interpret what the builders had decided. And as far as actually owning chickens, I think everyone knows I own them. I was cited for having them. I've had numerous people come to my house and actually state how clean they are, how quiet they are, how friendly they are. They see no problems, no odor, nothing. So yes, you can have chickens and take care of them, have them clean. People are going to say, well, I grew up next to a farm. We're not talking about a farm here. We're talking about a handful of chickens which will produce maybe a little bit of odor, but it is manageable, as opposed to hundreds of chickens that you cannot manage easily. And that is all. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
Just name and address for the record, please, sir.
Sure. Armin Sperduto, 10607 Airview Drive, North Huntington, PA, 15642.
Last name.
Sperduto.
Thanks.
I have a general question. How are all you commissioners, or who is going to police this? We don't police some of the rules and regulations you now have enforced. People leaving junk on the street, people having commercial, their residential homes becoming commercial places for their business, plumbing supplies in the backyard, everything. What's the plan to police that all of this will be kept in order? I'd like to hear the response.
So for this, we'll take all public input, and then the board will have a time to respond. So if you have any other questions or comments, you can give them at this time, and then the board will have some time at the end to respond.
That's pretty
All
much
right.
it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone interested else speak tonight? Yep. Just name and address for the record, please.
Should I leave this on? Or?
It's up to you.
Ryan Hall from 1886 Sandy Hill Road, right on the edge. Hall. Thank you. So this was something that we've been tracking, some of us, for I think 7 years was the last time this came up. And it's something that had a decent amount of support at the time. And I think ultimately then it got voted down. And then it came up again. And, to the previous gentleman said, how are we going to police this? That's one way to look at it. But another way to look at it is, it's a personal liberty issue. You see all the things that are going on. I've been wanting to do this inside the bounds of the township for almost a decade. And, it comes to a point where, look, I've tried to do it legally. Doesn't look like it's going to happen. I'm just going to go ahead and do it, right? And then what happens if one of my neighbors turns me in, and then a police officer comes down my driveway, and my dog comes out to, is aggressive because my dog doesn't care about a badge. It sees somebody else, being aggressive on my property, and he has to, put my dog, all because of the what ifs, right? There's a lot of what ifs. Well, what if this chicken gets loose? What if, at this point, we've been trying to do this for 7 years. I think there's a way that we can draft an ordinance to give the people that want to do it a way to do it within the regulations, and they either do it within that or they lose the opportunity to have them. I think the amount of people that are going to partake in this ordinance, dozens, maybe 100. But for the ones of us that have been trying to do this, we've been trying to do this for almost a decade. And, I just implore you guys to move forward with it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, Sharon Bone, 121 Summit Drive, North Huntington. Bone, as in give your dog one. Yeah. I did send an email to Mr. Silka prior to coming. I think there's a copy of it over on the table. Mainly what I wanted to say in addition to the email was that what we see right now in the political process in our presidential election, we see people trying to control people by fear. Both political parties are doing it. One's saying if you elect this person, this terrible thing is going to happen. The other one is saying if you elect this person, this terrible thing is going to happen. And I've listened to some of these meetings online. I've live streamed some of them. And that was one of the things that bothered me the most about these meetings, is that people, some of the commissioners, not all of them, were trying to put fear into the hearts and minds of the people of the township by saying, oh, if we allow hens in the township, people are going to get salmonella, it's going to bring critters, it's all this, and it's a tactic used by governments to try to control people through fear. And I hope you don't do that. I hope you approve this and allow us to have the hens. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else interested in speaking tonight?
Hello, I'm Ashley Egan, 260 McDonald Drive, North Huntington.
Last name, Ashley?
EGAN. You know my stance on this. You all know my stance on this. We've discussed it weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, right? I really like the new ordinance and where it has headed from where we started. I feel like we've made leaps and bounds with understanding what we actually as a people came here to get. So I also wanted to speak on the Urchinsons' behalf when I say not just them, but anybody who is living in those covenants that it says non-residential. We decided previously that we're not allowed to kill chickens on our property for meat. That would be agricultural. We're not allowed to sell an egg to our neighbor, so you're not going to make an income on it. So it's not a business. This is having a few pets in your yard. And if you want to have a few pets in your yard, I think that's residential. It's not having a business on behalf of that. I personally am not affected by this rule, but I think counting people out because of wording in their covenant that says that is unfair to decipher. But again, I've discussed it with each one of you, and I really hope that this ends up where we need it to be. Thank you for your time.
Any other residents interested in speaking tonight?
Hi, my name's Tom Kettering, live over on 30 Bethel Road, and this is the first time I've been to the meeting on this subject, and yeah, Kettering. Anyway, my thoughts are, just to make it simple, I think we should keep the ordinance the way it is, and I'm in agreement that I wish for the chickens to be prohibited under the current proposal. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Rich Nemeth, 1800 Challen Court, North Huntington, PA. My wife's here as well. Nemeth. I was here at the last meeting and I gave my comment. I am in favor of the new ordinance, chicken ordinance. In the turmoil of the economy and the election and the COVID, people are like not knowing what tomorrow is going to bring them. I know my wife's been canning like crazy just in case there's no food at the store. We're going to go, buy toilet paper and all that stuff coming up. So I think people should be allowed to have chickens if they so desire, as long as they can maintain the coop or the property, keep the odor down. I know last time when we were outside, one gentleman, we were talking, and he mentioned, I think he came back in and talked to one of the board members, mentioned about, and one of the gentlemen here asked about who's going to police. I know one person said maybe get a group of citizens that could, go out and inspect and, even educate people who wanted to have them, as an ongoing thing, as, part of people in the community that would, be interested in doing something like that. So I just, I have no plans on going out and getting chickens tomorrow, but I'm here if I choose to, I want to be able to go do it. To me, I have neighbors who have dogs that bark at all hours of the morning and howl, and, like I said last time, right down the road is the grower of the marijuana that I get the whiff of that comes up. Everybody's going to be for and against everything. So to me, this is minuscule, and it should be allowed in today's day and age. So again, we're in support of it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Megan Javor, J-A-V as in Victor, O-R. I live at 2141 Lancelot Drive. I did send an email prior to this. Lancelot Drive. I did send an email. I just want to quickly say, I'm going to keep it real short and sweet because you guys are going to hear opinions. I am in full support of the new ordinance. I think it is much more reasonable than the one that is currently out right now. And I do appreciate you guys for just keeping an open mind to everybody. I just feel like if my neighbors want to have chickens, that they should be allowed to. So, thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else interested in speaking tonight?
Hi, Katie Iwinski, Iwinski. I'm at 11357 Guffey Road Road. I just wanted to say that I'm in favor of the ordinance. I think it's a simple freedom to do what you'd like on your own property within well-outlined reason.
Thanks.
My name is Donna Egan, E-G-A-N, 240 Catherine Drive, North Huntington. I'm in favor of allowing people to have chickens. I mean, like the one gentleman said, I've got people walking their dog along my street, not always picking up after them. I don't make a big fuss about it. If I have to pick it up, I have dogs of my own. It's not a big deal. I've been to people's homes that has chickens, well, the neighbors had chickens, and I didn't even know they were there. You know, it's not like they're barking like my dog. Somebody pulls in the neighbor's driveway, she lets me know. My neighbor across the street, my dog lets me know. I don't see the problem, and I've seen Ashley's chickens, and her son cuddles them. And I have a neighbor who doesn't have chickens now, but did growing up, and said how affectionate, because her parents wouldn't let her have a dog because it made too much of a mess. But she had a chicken in her brother's bedroom when he went to college, and it was fine. Her brother didn't like it, but So I'm all for having the chickens. I don't think they're that big of a nuisance. I don't think they're gonna cause that much of a problem. Like I said, it's not like they're gonna be barking or, doing anything like that, so, thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else interested in speaking tonight?
My name is Maria Canitas, 551 Greenfield Court, North Huntington, PA. Konetes. Hello. I have been following the chicken thing, and I just want to say a quick piece. I'm a food safety manager, and I just kind of want to throw it out there. As nice of an idea as it is, there is a food safety risk associated with having chickens in your backyard. For the people that take care of them, maybe not so much, but just like with anything, there's the people that do and there's the people that don't. So I guess you'd have to kind of outweigh that, but I don't really know how we would. But like, I have a backyard garden that, I like to grow my own vegetables in the summertime. And so I guess a concern for someone like myself would be, what if my backyard neighbor has chickens, right? And the manure piles up and then it rains. And so then all of that comes down into my yard, into my garden. And now I could, not even knowingly, get salmonella onto my vegetables in my garden. So now I'm contaminated against my own will because there's chickens in the area with their filth and all of that. So I guess I just wanted to throw that out there. It is a huge risk, maybe not as big in some people considering how they might take care of them, but it is definitely a risk that does concern me quite a bit, and the illnesses that could be then associated with the such. That is all.
Anyone else interested in speaking tonight? All right, if that's it, we'll close public input. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, close public input, sorry.
Yep, we're going to close public input. We did get many emails through the manager. If Jeff, you want to summarize those, and if anyone wants to, there's copies on the table over here that if anyone's interested in looking at the emails that we're sending to the township, they can have the copies there.
Okay, what we did, we received 18 emails in favor of the chickens in residential areas. We received 2 that were in favor with certain qualifications, and we received 22 that were opposed to chickens in residential neighborhoods. And I have copies, if we would have put them onto the official record.
You can put those on the record. I have them for you. Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
Jeff, just real quick, Mr. Silva, does Mrs. Bones, is hers included?
Yeah.
It is.
As well as, I believe there was another resident that said she also emailed? There were two residents that said they emailed.
Yes. Mrs. Bone, it was Megan Javor, and also Mr. Yerkison submitted comments for the record.
Okay. Just so we have it on the record that you were also here speaking tonight.
At this point, I mean, if any board members want to have a discussion, time would be free if they're interested. If not, we could close the hearing.
Do you want to discuss how you're policing the chickens to answer the one question?
Yeah.
Or I can explain it.
I believe I've been not in favor of having domestic chickens since I've been on the board, and this has come up, like the one gentleman said, probably 7 or 8 years ago. And I was against it at that time. One of the biggest concerns, like you said, is how do we police it? No one on our current staff is a chicken domestic expert, keeping backyard chickens. So we would need to get some type of formalized education. That one gentleman had an idea about having maybe a group of people that are actually better educated. If we did move forward, that might not be a bad idea to explore, but we would have to still have township staff on board that would be educated to be able to police it. And that's a difficult situation as itself. Many residents that do this may have an upkeep chicken coop and take care of it, but there's probably going to be maybe 1 or 2 that don't. And we're going to have to tell that resident, you know, you're not up to code, you can't have chickens. Like I said, our current staff, it's nothing against them, this is just nothing that we regulate currently. Would have to get some type of formalized education, and let alone the staff hours that would be put towards regulating this, would put a toll on the department of whatever would regulate that. So, I mean, all that would still have to be established.
And in addition, the ordinance requires, though, a permitting process. It appears that if you do not have chickens after 90 days, so if there's a lapse, you have to go back and get a new permit. There are permit requirements like proof of your, the ownership, copy of the deed, the fee, and dimensions of the lot size. And it goes on to describe as well if there's falsification of a record or if there's a violation of any portion of the ordinance, that through the permit, the municipality can then go through enforcement through the magistrate for penalty, just so you know.
All right. Any other board discussion for tonight?
Zach, if I may. Okay, so I've listened and I've read and I've heard from everybody in emails and received. So what I'd like to do is I was taking notes and considered many things that are involved with this. I wrote down 9 things, and I want you to listen to these 9 things because I hope that this will shed some light. Number 1, your civil liberties. Number 2, the health. In favor of, for you, and the food that you're going to eat, control over your own food through nutrients. Also, hens, and let me say, one of the things I'm going to say, and I'm going to reiterate absolutely positively, no roosters. I want to make that clear. I read some public comments about those that are opposed to this, and people were still talking about roosters. We laid the roosters to rest about 1 to 2 months ago. We made it very clear at this board, there was not going to be any roosters, period. That's not that's not on discussion anymore. So roosters is out. And getting back to the health, ticks. We all know, and anybody that hunts knows how bad ticks are actually becoming in the state of Pennsylvania. They're getting worse. And what are we doing about them? What's the state doing about it? What's the governor doing about it? Absolutely nothing. Nothing. I'll tell you what Lyme's disease does. It attacks your heart. Okay, I know a few people that have had pacemakers because of a stupid little insect known as a tick. Crisis and COVID-19. Point number 3. COVID-19 created food shortages. Wouldn't it be nice to know that you're not held responsible and held in your house waiting for the government to tell you that it's okay to go grocery shopping. And if you do, you got to go at a certain time, and you got to do this, and you got to do that, controlling the people. Look, we're already a very civilized society. I don't think we need more government control in our lives. And that goes back to my first point on civil liberties. Point number 4, let's talk about dogs. Man, they are noisy. And they are noisy, and they bark, and they bark, and they bark. Let's compare dogs to chickens. Hens. Again, anybody that's listening, I am against roosters. There will be no roosters if I have anything to say about the ordinance. We let the dogs bark and bark and bark, and that's created a lot of problems in our communities. I know that personally. What are we doing about the dogs? What are we doing about the fireworks that go off after 10 o'clock? All right, that's a nuisance. I'm from Ward 7. I've had 14 phone calls, emails, and text messages. 14 people have gotten in touch with me from Ward 7. All 14 people are in favor of. I am a representative of democracy. The government that we abide by is a democratic society. We do believe in democracy, and I'm a representative of the people that put me from Ward 7 into government. As a representative of democracy, when I have 14 people in my ward say, Eric, we're in favor of, and I have 0 say that they're against, as a representative of democracy, I must go with who those are in favor of. Majority rules. That's democracy. Fines. Those that will have chickens, you got to understand, you have to keep these things policed. You don't want us showing up there, because I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be in favor of levying heavy fines. This is going to be a give and take situation, whether this passes or doesn't pass. And again, let me restate, no roosters. That's number 7, or number 6. Number 8, how about we limit the amount of chickens per yard size? I read in some of the opposing comments that people think that there's going to be folks that are going to be living on 1 acre and have 100 chickens. That is not going to happen. There is no way. I am for regulating the amount of chickens per the size of your yard, period. It only makes sense, right? If I've got 100 acres, I should be allowed to have 100 chickens. But if I have 1 acre, I'm not going to have 100 chickens. That wouldn't be fair to you to try to clean up after them, and it wouldn't be fair to your neighbors. And lastly, you know what? There's risk in everything. There is risk in getting out of bed every morning and crossing the road to go to the bus station, to get on the bus to go to work. When did we Americans become so afraid of everything? Who? That's military talk, by the way. Who? All right. So says Mr. Eric from Ward 7. That's all I got to say, Zach. Thank you.
Ronnie, go ahead.
Just a few points I'd like to make. To the gentleman about who will do the enforcement, this is something that I've been speaking about for the past 3 months. We have nobody on staff, right? I mean, we have an ordinance officer, but nobody on staff that can enforce this. Do we bring in a veterinarian? I've asked this the last couple months. I don't know the answer. Do we train staff? Do we hire citizens? Who knows? But there's, I think, no ifs, ands, or buts about this. It's going to cost the township money. It's definitely going to cost the township money. The little bit of fees that we're requesting for this will not cover any of that. So that is a big issue. To the comment about any of the commissioners here spreading fear or threatening any of the residents, I think is very unfair. Anything I've testified to behind this microphone, I did research on. I deal in facts. I was in law enforcement for 31 years. I deal in facts and evidence. I don't come out here and just say, hey, just eggs, these eggs are more healthy, this and that. Go on the CDC website. I know I've spoke here about that these chickens, live chickens, do cause salmonella. And I know I see people's heads nodding no and that every time I say it, but they do. Go on the CDC website. This year, 2020, is the biggest outbreak of salmonella in the United States from live chickens. You can get it. You can get it from the chicken. You can get it from cleaning the chicken coop. That's not spreading fear. That's fact. And another fact that I found out from my research, and this will be my last point, everybody that stands up that seems it's for the chickens want them for the eggs. Chickens only produce eggs for 2 years. What do we do? 2 or 3 years is what it says online. So what do we do after 3 years? The limit's 6 chickens. I get 6 chickens in my yard. for the healthy eggs, and after 2 or 3 years, my chickens quit producing. Do I get rid of those chickens and get more? Because I'm hearing here that these are pets. So you can't get rid of your pets. So what do you do? So then you have for the rest of the life of that chicken, you have it and it's not producing eggs, which, as I said, most people that got up and stood here, that's why they want them for their eggs. So what do you do when they're done producing? That's another question I have. That's all I have. Thanks.
I would like to have the petition that was submitted earlier submitted to the record. The township received a petition. The township received a petition from a group of citizens, and I'd like that added to the public record.
Is that the one from the Yurkiches?
I believe there were several hundred signatures on it.
Who provided it though? That's what I'm asking.
I
So
think
we
the
make-
think the Yurkisons, yes. And I would like to address the ordinance as it's proposed right now has safeguards in it for food safety, and it also says no compost piles. The compost piles, I think Maria mentioned that she was concerned with manure running over onto her property. The way the ordinance is worded, there would be no runoff because the compost piles are not allowed. I would invite everybody to read the ordinance as it's written right now, and it's on the website, because I think it does address that, like the no rooster thing. And I would also disagree that any specific training is going to be required to enforce this ordinance over any of the other ordinances that we have. When you have an ordinance, it has a checklist of requirements. And I think this last draft that we have is fairly plain and simple, and it's just a matter of checking, is there odor or isn't there odor? Is there a hen house that meets the requirements as far as distance, or does it not? Is there a compost or is there not a compost pile? So I think it's a simple thing that I don't think is going to require any particular training for. And if we do need to acquire training, that is fairly simple to do. And that would be all that I would have to address.
Fran, do you have anything tonight?
I don't really have any comments, except we've been policing cats and dogs, so I assume that we could police chicken just as well. Chicken are probably less hassle to police than cats or dogs are. Oftentimes cats get away. You don't know where they are. I know, I've been a cat owner. Don't have any right now, but sometimes they're gone for days. Never see them. And I haven't heard anyone complaining about policing dogs. And obviously we've been doing it because we must have a way to do it. I guess the police will go out and check on whether the dog is barking and yipping and tell the owner to quiet the dog. Although I haven't seen that happen too often either. Sometimes I hear dogs barking a lot, and that's just the way it is, and it's the way it is when you have pets.
Thanks. Jason, do you have anything tonight?
So, first off, I would like to say that I think this was great that we were able to engage in this debate again. You know, this has been very civil. I've talked to a lot of great people on both sides. And, you know, I was able to go out and visit a few of these homes who had chickens. And to be honest, when I first got there, I didn't even know that they had them. You know, the way, you know, people are looking at whether it's a nuisance, whether, we can police them. Ultimately, yes, I agree that will cost the township some money. Whether that money is well spent, that's something for us all to decide. But I don't think that should be the sole reason that we vote against it. And I also believe that, I agree with Fran, there's dogs in my neighborhood that are constantly barking. I got neighbors that are constantly shooting off fireworks. I mean, it's one of those things where, do the pros outweigh the cons? And that is definitely something I'm going to be looking at very closely. Thanks.
I guess that leaves me, so I'll put in my 2 cents what it's worth. Like I said, I was against having domestic chickens in the backyards 7 or 8 years ago when this came up, and that's still my opinion. I know Ron mentioned, and the gentleman asked about, how we're going to regulate this and cost of staffing. Not necessarily the cost, but just the time and resources that's put into the staff of regulating and setting this policy up, let alone going out and policing it. So that's a big concern. The health effects, whether you want to agree with them or not, the CDC does have stuff about domestic chickens. You have the avian flu, E. coli, salmonella. And as Ron stated, this year it does have a larger increase of salmonella cases due to domestic chickens in backyards. That's coming from the CDC's website. Whether you want to agree with it or not, that's fine, but that's actually on the CDC's website. Egg production, like Ron mentioned, I similarly saw that I'm no egg expert or chicken expert, but just from doing research online, chickens usually slow down in egg production around 3 years old. So if you're considering a pet and it's just a pet and you're not using it for the eggs, that's fine. You just have a pet that's not producing eggs. And again, it's not a fear tactic, but they can bring in predators. Whatever those predators might be, it's a possibility those predators will come along with rodents and different things just from the coops being there. And I kind of look in retrospect, many years ago, probably before any of us were around, you would have domestic animals in cities, right? You probably have pigs and chickens all through the cities. And why did they get rid of those? For health concerns. There was sickness in cities because there was no regulations and you had these animals going around in cities and whatnot. So I almost look at us regressing and saying, not saying we can't do it safe, but those issues were there then and they could still be there in the future if it's not regulated properly. And then also doing other research too, which I don't believe we even mentioned this, but different vaccines and shots you could get for poultry for domestic use. A lot of these bigger facilities that do chicken production for foods, they give their chickens different vaccines and shots to help not spread different flus and sicknesses. We don't address any of that issues with the policy ordinance that's been put out there to us. Now, imagine the same fact that a lot of these people want them for the domestic egg use. They probably don't want to get the chickens vaccinated because they think that the vaccination is a bad thing. But that probably would be something smart to do to eliminate any type of risk of any type of flus or different sicknesses for the actual chickens themselves. We mentioned about the roosters as well. From my understanding, it's hard to tell the sex of a chicken when they're real young. I believe they can do it, but a lot of times they make that mistake. So say that mistake is made and the resident does have a rooster. Are we going to go pull the rooster away and say, wait, after the roosters are 6 months or so old, say, wait, you can't have that pet now? Well, it's my pet. We're following that same situation now where 2 residents had domestic poultry in their backyard, were cited. And, here we are now with other residents having interest in trying to change the ordinance. And I always say, it's a slippery slope. Now we're talking about domestic chickens, right? The young fellow was up here speaking about a month ago, and he said, well, what about a duck? And like I said, I'm no expert on animals, but I don't see a difference between a duck and a chicken. I'm not for having chickens or ducks, but it's hard for me to say a winners and losers. Why can't I tell that young kid he can have a duck when I'm saying the chicken's completely okay? And then maybe 6 months down the road, someone wants a goat. They use a goat milk to make cheese. The goat chews up the backyard so they don't got to cut grass. I'm not here to pick winners and losers. That's why I think it's easily clear cut to say no domestic farm animals in residentially zoned areas. I believe it was Commissioner Blasco last month said, maybe our ordinance is a little bit excessive at 10 acres. And I could agree with that. Limiting it maybe down to 3 acres or something of that nature, I could get around. But for limited and quarter-acre lots, that is a bit too far, I believe. At the same time, we're talking about that ordinance. Yurkic did bring up about covenants in neighborhoods. I'm not in favor of having chickens, but I can tell you right now, I can't support a covenants policy because that's not our business as a township. If you have a covenants where you live, that's a civil suit between you and your neighbors. The solicitor could probably touch a little bit on that, but that's not our place as a municipality to say what goes on in the covenants whatsoever, as far as that goes. And that's all I have for tonight. Any of the other board members have anything, or we can close the hearing?
Does Brian want to say anything?
I think he's offline now.
I'd like to readdress, if I
Yeah.
may. Okay. Mr. Sperduto was concerned about who's going to enforce this. Armin. Yes, sir. I'll tell you what. I'll be the first commissioner to sign up to enforce all regulations and stipulations and restrictions inside Ward 7. So help me God. I promise to do that. I don't mind playing the good guy or the bad guy. I've played both. You know, that's the beauty of this life. Unfortunately, we've all been down that road where we've been the good people and we also been the bad people. I can wear both hats. I don't mind going to somebody's house because I got a phone call from a next door neighbor that's complaining about odor. I don't have a problem. Look, we are all very, very respectful citizens. I know that we are, and we probably number in the 99.9% factor, but then we got that 0.1% that won't ever do what they want to do in life. Well, we need to rein those folks in. I'm not saying through government control, I'm just saying about just basic civility. So I don't have a problem being your first code enforcement officer for chickens for my ward. I don't have a problem with that at all. I'd be more than happy to do it. Fellow commissioners, I'm sorry if I put you guys on the spot to join, but you don't have to if you don't want. It's cool. I'll do it. And then how about we address the issue? Maybe we just try this moratorium, maybe we put a 2-year limit on this and see how it goes. Let's give it a chance before we go and shoot it down. You know, we can put something into effect for 2 years and live with it and see if it works. 2 years out of our life, really, folks, is not a whole heck of a lot of time. It really isn't, to give something an opportunity to try it and thrive. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then we bring the regulations in and make it even stricter, or we just do away with the ordinance altogether. And lastly, another control measure is, again, the yard size is going to dictate the number of chickens. It only makes sense. You can't have 100 chickens in a quarter acre. 100 chickens on 100 acres? Yeah. That's my redirect.
All right.
Thanks.
Typically, we don't give back and forth, but if you want to come up, just come up to the podium, please.
In the current ordinance.
Name and address, sorry.
Armin Sperduto, 10607 Airview Drive. Yes. In the current ordinance that is before you guys and gals at this point, what is the limitation on size and how many? You're going to be actually voting on something without having 1 acre, 6 chickens, 2 acres, 12 chickens? How are you going to vote on something before you even know that issue?
That's a good point. And we can vote in favor of it, just say that we're in favor.
Yeah. The current ordinance that's been proposed, there's copies on the table and has limitations for size and amount of hens.
Okay.
So, I mean, that would address that issue. At least that's what the board is currently, I would say, debating on.
Gotcha.
If it's interested. So, I mean, if you want to take a look, it's there.
All right. That was just a question that I had.
Yep.
Thank you.
Just for the record, in the ordinance that I have in front of me, and I hopefully don't have the incorrect one, it was 1,000 square feet and up to 6 chickens in a residential zone.
That's 10,000.
10,000, I'm sorry, oh God. 10,000 square feet and up to 6 chickens.
Just one thing, I'll go off what you're saying, Eric, and I heard it brought up earlier, and I didn't mention it, but you're talking about smell. That's very subjective to me, too. I would hate you if you're going to say you're going to be that guy to say, hey, what smells and doesn't smell? Because what smells to the homeowner that has a domestic poultry, they might be numb to it because they're living with it every day, or their neighbors. By the same token, that's very subjective. It's not concrete where you can say factually based. What smells and doesn't smell is another concern if you would look at a smell being a nuisance to someone having the chickens in their backyard. Yeah. And I believe another resident that was up here a few months ago, like I said, and she's not up here tonight, she talked about guinea hens and saying that they're a good thing to have with chickens because they protect the chickens. And again, you said about the ticks and whatnot. So we're still picking winners and losers, even if you're for chickens. This ordinance basically eliminates any other type of domestic chickens or fowl, as far as ducks or other things. So, people that speak say, well, we want to have the freedom for the residents. Well, you're limiting their freedom by saying they can only have chickens. And by all means, I'm not for this, but you're limiting their freedoms already by saying it's just going to be the chickens. And then that's why I said, I fear there has to be a point where we cut it off. I think for the township to operate very cleanly, it's clean for us to say there's no domestic farm animals in people's backyards in residential zone areas.
I think if we let's just do case by case. We really, really should. This ordinance deals specifically with hens, period. Somebody wants to introduce a wolf, a cougar in their backyard, we're going to deal with that as case by case.
Well, it's interesting you say that case by case, because I was brainstorming ideas. Like I said, I'm not in favor for this, and
right.
As other members of the board told me that they have 4 votes and they can make me a $1 bet if it was that we're going to have chickens in residential areas, which is fine. If we would move down that path, to look at this ordinance, I'd almost look at it in a different direction, having it as a special use permit, and then they could go to apply for a special use permit for the property, and then go through the different ordinance process of getting that special use permit versus just making a blanket ordinance. It would be a different avenue we could go, like you were saying, if it's a case-by-case basis.
Right.
So that way, every case-by-case would be heard to get that special use permit.
I hope that the community understands, all 7 of us Board of Commissioners are on the same page. We do not want to negatively impact property values. Honest to God, I can tell you 7 for 7, we don't want to impact negatively property values. Some people out there might say, yeah, that sounds nice, but there's the aspect of it, well, it is going to affect. Not if we keep it clean. Not if we give it a chance. Again, when did we become so afraid to try things outside the box? Man, come on. I think our forefathers would be a little bit ashamed and embarrassed. I really do.
One more thing, I'll let you go, Ron, but when you're talking about giving it a try, and I was in favor, like you were saying, to give it a try. I believe, like I said last month with Commissioner Blasco, us giving it a try would be, in my opinion, trying that 10 acres maybe down to 5 or 3 acres and seeing how our process would work at that limitation of acreage. And I know it wouldn't help some of the residents that are in favor that currently have chickens, that actually, broke our ordinance by doing so. But Chelsea can maybe allude to it, but it would be a little bit harder to remove someone's chickens in, let's say, 2 years, because they currently are allowed to have them. I don't know if we could go back and say, you know what, we changed the rules and you have to remove them now. I think they might have some legal ground to stand on at that point in time to say, hey, you know what, they would have to be either grandfathered in or something of that nature.
Yeah, you would have, I think it would come down to the fowl, each individual bird, because if they choose to then change and get a new chicken to replace an old chicken to have egg bearing, then the question becomes whether the new ordinance would come into effect or stand back and be the old ordinance. And that's a legal argument. Yes, there could be a grandfathering clause in there, but that's something that you could address in your new ordinance to combat, so that when they get new chickens, as the old ones come out, they're no longer grandfathered in and they move into then your new ordinance. And that's probably the best way to deal with it. But yes, you would have some that would be grandfathered and some that would not.
I'm in favor of 1 in, 1 out.
I get what you mean.
Yeah. The one that doesn't produce, I'm sorry. Maybe it's time for him or her to go. Sorry for the family, sorry for the kids. But if you want to have it as a pet, that's a different story. But non-producing hens aren't going to do anything for you other than bring company to the kids. But that's up to you. But I think 1 in, 1 out. If you decide to get rid of one, you can go ahead and get another one. But you can't keep one that doesn't produce and then go grab another one, because now you just violated the regulation in the ordinance, where it says maybe a maximum of 3 based on your square footage.
Ron, do you have something else?
Yeah, I was going to say what you just said about if we do a 2-year pilot project, that's going down a slippery slope, because just what you said, and we've heard here the families that have them that have to remove them are saying they're pets. So I don't know how you just get rid of someone's pet. But also, to follow up with the odor is very subjective. To say there's an odor, And also, to see what the hen house looks like, it's not to be in a dilapidated condition. That's very subjective too. If I live beside that and it's a blue tarp over top of some wood, some 2x4s, that's dilapidated to me and I don't want to look at it every day. But somebody, if you're the inspector, you can come out and say, that doesn't look bad. Well, you don't have to live out there and see it every day. Same with the odor. The day the inspector comes out, the wind can be blowing the other way. They could have just cleaned it up, but I live next to it and I know it's offensive on a day-by-day basis that I can't sit in my backyard. Way too subjective. It's not just a checklist like we heard, because it's very subjective.
Well, if I'm not
That's
mistaken,
going to be
I
a
think,
big issue, I think.
yeah. Oh, I agree with you, Ron. I don't want to see anybody having.
It's not cut and
tarps.
dry where we can go
Right.
out and say, yep, this is it. Yep, you conformed to all this. No, you know what? Live my life and sit on my back porch and smell this and see it every day before you decide.
I
think-
just want to add to that, that the ordinance specifically says no tarps. New material.
Right. Again, dilapidated, it says, can be interpreted many different ways.
But there's a
That's my
definition,
point.
there's a definition in there as to what you can't use reused materials, and no tarps.
I have one question for Zach.
Yeah.
You said about no goats. How did the school district was allowed to have goats a few years back? Did we somehow allow that to happen?
Well, I believe that we currently work on, and I don't want to misspeak for anybody, but we work on a complaint-driven system as far as code enforcement. And I was actually kind of allude to that when we talked about, issues with neighbors. And I'm not trying to pick out any residents, but 2 of them volunteered themselves saying that they were here because they have chickens and they were cited. This whole debate has started because 2 residents were cited about having domestic chickens not following the township's ordinance. So now you're talking about the goats, not to try to change subject, but to answer your question, if someone would have complained about those goats, we probably would have cited them. But there was no complaint about the goats. Kind of getting back to the thing about, I don't think anyone should break the township's ordinances, but if these residents had neighbors that did not put the complaint in, we probably would not be having this debate right now. When the debate happened about 8 years ago, it was residents that got together that wanted to start a group to say that this is what we wanted to do, and they tried to get the ordinance changed at that particular time without purchasing the chickens ahead of time. So when you talk about cleanliness aspects or whatever it might be, we've had 2 proven cases, not to call anybody out, that a resident complained because it was either not kept, it didn't smell, or whatever the case would have been, but there was 2 complaints put in for residents that currently do have chickens in their backyard. So once we get more residents, because we're allowing people to have them, how many complaints are we going to get due towards a subjective measurement of cleanliness? Does a coop looks okay? Or the chickens kept in their chicken run? That's going to become a bigger issue to address. And like I said, it's all complaint driven. Ever since I've been on the board, we don't drive around looking for tall grass and say, wait, get the ruler out, your grass is over, a certain amount, we're going to cite you. We don't, it's a complaint-driven system. And like I said, I don't believe we got any complaints for the school district having goats on the hillside, as far as I know. Yeah, like I said, typically it's not a give and take, but just, if you want to, go ahead. Just name and address again for the record, please.
Ryan Hall, 1886 Sandy Hill Road. Just some technical feedback. Both of y'all mentioned about the subjectivity of the odor. I'm an environmental engineer. I design, build, own, and operate facilities, and virtually every facility that has an air permit, that's very customary language to have a clause in there about no nuisance odors. So, I mean, if it's a painting facility, it's to your argument. If I'm the mechanic there every day, I'm not going to smell it. They're still subject to the same language. No nuisance odor can leave the property boundaries. So, I mean, that's something that's not causing any heartache for any other industry. But I just wanted to bring that up since that was something that both of you mentioned. It's in virtually every air permit that anybody has. So,
thanks.
I would just in response to that, if you drive by a farm, you're driving by a farm. That's all I'm going to say. When you drive by a farm, you can tell. If you drive down the turnpike, there can be a farm a mile away in the distance, and you're driving by a farm.
So Do you think it's better to have an ordinance or not have an ordinance? If you don't have an ordinance, then what happens?
So
There are no rules.
I would currently say that we have an ordinance that there was certain residents that chose not to follow, maybe by neglect, or maybe they didn't know there was an ordinance. But we currently have an ordinance. Now, may our ordinance be stronger worded? I would 100% agree. It's maybe a little bit loose now. Maybe it's a little bit loose in the aspects of people want more chickens and limit the amount of space. But we currently do have ordinance. Like I said, people chose to not follow the current ordinance either by neglect or they weren't aware of the ordinance. But we do have an ordinance. I mean, that's not debate. I mean, we wouldn't be here, like I said, having this debate today if two residents probably did not follow the ordinance and were cited. So we do have an ordinance. That's not a question. The question was, could the ordinance be stronger worded and written? 100%.
I believe it should be too.
Any other board input for tonight? If not, we had public comment and it's been closed, so just would need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned at 7:56.